Welcome to Star Citizen, the Alpha 3.11 and the Ship Guide. Today we are looking at the real heavyweight, the Aegis Dynamics Retaliator. It is currently only playable as a heavy bomber, and you can also buy a basic version where you get this heavy bomber as a loaner. Like in every ship guide, we start with the exterior, then we go into the interior, have a look at the combat characteristics and the capabilities of the ship, and finally we go into the atmosphere again, where we will see how the ship behaves in atmospheric flight. Finally, we draw a conclusion as to whether the Retaliator bomber is worthwhile in my eyes or where you could buy it. The Tally, as the Retaliator is also called, is already being considered as a modular ship and is planned in several variants. The heavy bomber version mentioned above is already flight ready and playable, but there are more modules in the front and rear areas that we'll be looking at in detail. Here we can turn the Retaliator into a completely different ship. For example, we have the possibility to convert the Tally into a cargo plane, a dropship or even a transport ship for VIP guests. However, since these are not yet available or playable, we will limit ourselves to the bomber version in this guide, which I think is also the most interesting version. The ship has at least classification of large, which means it belongs to the large ships, and the role of the ship is heavy bomber. It is intended for 4 to 7 crew members and has in its bomber version 0 SCU of cargo capacity. The specifications are with almost 70 meters length, 43 meters wide and 30 meters high, then already a statement. The fight speed with 183 meters per second and the maximum speed with 942 meters per second is as expected, not to compare with a fighter or a faster model. The Tally can be bought for about 4 million UEC at New Deal in Lowville on Hurston in-game. But let's start our tour with the exterior. If you stand in front of a Retaliator for the first time, you will notice that the whole thing is bigger than you might expect from a heavy bomber. The design language and look of the Tally rather remind of a stealth bomber. Rounded edges and the flat design promise a smaller silhouette with the front. However, the ship is not small, and in the end it's really a bigger chunk in space. The VTOL thrusters, which stand vertically upwards, catch your eyes directly. Just there is definitely a good atmospheric flight characteristic, and we can take off and land relatively relaxed. There are several manned turrets distributed over the ship, which come in different sizes. And one thing first, for the pilot there is no armament besides the torpedoes if you are flying alone. With the crew you have 3 turrets with size 3 armament, that means in the stern down, in the front upwards and in the front downwards. These come with size 3 armament, and in addition there are 2 smaller turrets on the sides facing up. Each of them is equipped with a size 2 armament. The Retaliator has room for 5 man turrets, which makes the Tally not only a heavy bomber but also a very powerful ship. But the main armament of this heavy bomber are the torpedoes. The size 9 torpedoes here are very strong, with 2 pieces in the front and 4 in the back. And with this size 9 torpedoes available, you have the maximum in the game. The standard equipment here comes from Talon Weapon Systems, and that is the Argus 9 cross-section torpedo. And here you have the total torpedo payload of almost 400,000 damage. However, there are some minor limitations where we will come back to in the part when we will talk about the fighting skills. We get access to the ship via 2 elevators in the front side. The Tally not only had VTOL thrusters, which move forward and straight after activation, but also the landing gear, which when retracted extends 2 wings in front and the rear wings to the side. The optics therefore give the impression that the flight characteristics are also very good. The design is typical for Aegis Dynamic and is equipped with several wings. The similarity to the Vanguard series is undeniable, and the whole thing looks very good for my taste. Subjectively, my feeling concerning the acceleration is rather mediocre. This heavy ship is not agile or light and agile, but rather ponderous and in comparison rather below to a freelancer or larger ships. In the lower part we have the torpedo shafts, and otherwise the whole thing is relatively slim designed. Let's go to the interior. After entering the elevator we come to an area where we once get into the front or here into the back of the ship. We have direct access to most of the ship's components, and the first door here we come to the torpedo control room. Here we not only have a direct view of our aft torpedoes, but also several screens and especially a torpedo or rocket station. This will become important as soon as the rocket and torpedo gameplay is fully implemented, because here you can park a crew member who takes care of the rockets and torpedoes. Currently it only has a bigger multifunctional display and you have a nice view on your rear torpedoes. On the other side of the corridor we also have an overview of our two stern torpedoes and get to the rear of the ship. Also we get to the turrets, which are on the right and left side of the ship. My tip, however, is to occupy these two turrets last, since they have the smaller armament. The view of the turrets is good, and especially the operation is the same for all turrets of the Retaliator. We have no changes here, which means that all turrets are the same and have the same modes. On the other side we have an identical turret, so we don't need this one, and have a look at the bigger turret in the rear area. This one is pointing down and is equipped with level 3 weapons. Two more identical turrets are in the front area pointing up and one down. When we come back to the main room we have a hatch at the top and at the bottom, which leads directly into space. Looking forward we have another access door, and here we get to the 4 torpedoes of the heavy bomber. As mentioned before, together with the rear torpedoes we have a total of 6 torpedoes, which we can distribute to targets by express delivery. In the right aisle we come to a washroom and a toilet with shower. In addition we have a storage possibility in 3 small cupboards, but these are not yet functional. On the left side we come to the front area or to the cockpit. Here we also have a nice panoramic view. In the front area there is a ladder leading up for the crew areas, and here on the left we come directly into the captain's area. This is rather typical for a fighter bomber and is only equipped with 1 bed. We take a look at the 2 man towers. This one, which points down, is directly in front of the cockpit, and we have a relatively good front view here. In my opinion, the primary man turret is in the upper area. The small ladder leads us to the crew area, where you not only have a night view but also access to the front upper turret. This has a relatively large field of view and is not only limited to the top, but can also work well forward and diagonally downward. Here we also have 6 additional beds, which brings the total of 7 beds for a relatively large crew for a heavy bomber. Our view into the cockpit of the Tally is kept remarkably dark, which means that unlike other ships we are not dazzled. And the whole thing is very clearly arranged. There is no lack of multifunction displays here. There are 8 MFDs in total, 6 of them are changeable and 2 have a fixed preset. But let's go to the most important part, the combat capabilities of the Retaliator. Especially with a turret crew, the Tally has a lot to offer. Here you are really powerful on the way, and due to the good placement of the turrets you are actually strong in every direction. With a classic laser repeater setup on the main turret you get 3800 DPS, which is a fight announcement. By default it is 3300 DPS and you can take on any opponent. In the first part of our combat test we limit ourselves to the ship's armament and leave the torpedoes out. The reason for this is that the torpedoes play completely different than a normal space fight, because we are going at a distance and don't want to be directly involved in a fight. The remaining components, the ones in the medium size which are installed as standard, are all good military components with a good grade. The whole thing can be used directly like the tally is delivered. All components, from the power plants to the cooler ones to the shield generators, are always installed in pairs, which means we can individualize the whole thing very well and adapt it to the respective purpose. As quantum drive, the popular and recommendable crossfield is used, and apart from that, the quantum fuel and normal fuel tank is sufficient to travel the whole Stanton system without any problems. With a full bomber crew, it is of course adventurous to have a lot of targets, so priority missions or situations where you find several enemies at once are worthwhile. Here, the tally can play out its bonuses well, and the power is there no matter how many targets you fight against. But it's not only dealing that's possible with the Retaliator and the bomber crew. They also take some hits. The two middle-sized shield generators do a good job and are definitely sufficient against most enemies. And to be able to assess the defensive abilities a little bit better. The Freelancer is also equipped with two size M shield generators and can take the punishment just as well. We didn't notice any shield holes or other errors in the test, but it is the case with almost every ship that there are smaller holes somewhere. We didn't find problems like with a Constellation, for example. In summary, for the combat skills with the bomber crew, the Retaliator is definitely a really good way to experience crew gameplay and team play. Really, everybody has something to do here. The gunners can fire almost always, and the pilot can concentrate on evasive maneuvers and navigation. Also, the guns are well placed, so that even rear turrets get something to do. The visibility is good and definitely better than on some other ships. But let's get to the thing that makes the Retaliator so special. Its armament in the belly. The size 9 torpedoes are currently the maximum you can deal in the burst of damage. And if you are the victim where such a damned event occurs, you usually only have the respawn you see next. In a rough summary, ships that fly with the components of level medium have no chance against the tally with 1 or 2 hits. If you are traveling in a small and agile ship, however, the level 9 torpedoes might not hit you at all. They are very big and ponderous and need a certain target size in any case. From an M50 on, for example, it is possible that you can simply fly past the torpedo while moving and don't even have to try to detonate countermeasures. From the size of a Cutlass or Freelancer on, you are then ready to be in real danger. If you should be targeted by a Retaliator, you should use everything you have and try to hide somewhere. However, with the new rocket and torpedo gameplay, the tally hasn't really become stronger. It has become more difficult to take out targets accordingly, because countermeasures have a higher effect and whether we need longer until torpedoes finally reach their target. Also, the activation process has not been accelerated, which means that all rocket or torpedo based ships have lost some of their power. But this does not change the fact that we can assume with absolute certainty that a hit will destroy a ship in the larger class of a Freelancer like this one. However, you have to keep in mind the activation time and also the flight time of the torpedo is not the shortest. But let's come to the targets for which the Retaliator is actually intended. We have here as target a Carrack, which is fully charged. That means the shields are on top and all components are in the standard version of the ship. Currently it is possible to aim a maximum of 2 torpedoes at the target and to fire them simultaneously. Up to now it was possible to do a lot of damage to a carrack with 2 level 9 torpedoes, or to turn off the lights forever with a suitable hit. In our test we see that we hit the carrack twice, but the damage is not massive and the kill is still far away. And the time we need to re-engage and fire our next 2 torpedoes is not enough to turn off the carrack. We can fire all 6 torpedoes in a row at maximum speed, but the carrack survives here without any problems. So it is currently not possible to take out ships of this size or even a hammerhead or reclaimer. A single Retaliator only has a chance where if we first damage the shields and then hit them with torpedoes. I would also like to point out that we are shooting at a carrack that is neither moving or using countermeasures. Against a caterpillar, however, the damage caused is usually so great that after the second salve you will switch off the caterpillar completely. However, it would be rash to write off the Retaliator or torpedo ships and say that they are currently no longer worth it. The torpedo and rocket gameplay is currently changing and will be rebuilt on a regular basis. So in a few versions it may look completely different again, as we have seen in version 3.9 or 3.10. Here it was possible to take out a hammerhead with a tele without any problems. I think it would be good to find a middle way here, where the rockets and torpedoes are still a real danger, but there are also possibilities to avoid the whole thing or to take countermeasures. But I would really be interested in your opinion on this topic. Let's come to one of the last points of our test, namely the atmospheric flight characteristics of the Retaliator. As I said before, she is a ship of the size large, and for these conditions she flies really well. In the atmosphere with her extended wings and VTOL thrusters she offers quite a bit of comfort, and we can fly over the surface relatively fast and agile. However, you should by far not expect that we have the possibility to fly like a fighter jet. Of course, the tele is a bit cumbersome and relatively imprecise to steer. Concerning speed and acceleration, it is also rather sluggish. But still, I would rather draw a positive conclusion. For a ship of this size, with a crew of up to 7 people, it's rather in the front end concerning agility in the atmosphere. And if you are looking for other possibility uses for the tele outside of combat, of course delivery missions are also possible with the ship, but cargo missions are completely cancelled due to lack of cargo space. Therefore the tele is and will remain a bomber, and you can buy it on the pledge store. The normal bomber as well as the base version, that means without the torpedo base in front and behind. However, the anniversary sale is coming soon and the tele will most likely be available again. Currently we can buy the whole thing on the grey market, that means the secure variant star hangar. Here we get the tele from about $280. By the way, the upgrade value here is about $275 in the pledge store. The grey market also offers several purchase options, just have a look here. I'd also like to mention the modularity. The Retaliator was designed modular from the beginning, and besides the torpedo base we saw here, there are other versions like the cargo version or the dropship, up to the VIP transport version. You can also buy these modules separately, but they are not available or usable in the game yet. But for the future, an interesting feature of the tele. I hope you liked the video and you leave me a like and a subscribe here. You can also activate the bell, so we will automatically see every video and you don't have to search for it. The Retaliator is and will remain a dedicated bomber, which means that other proposals are rather useless here. And you should definitely concentrate on bigger ships. In the current version the torpedoes and missiles are not as powerful as they should be, but the Retaliator still has a reason to exist. Especially against ships that are larger than, for example, a Constellation and the following, tele is still clearly a risk. Especially if it's equipped with a bomber crew or is on the way with other escort ships that weaken the shields of larger ships? Because then 1 or 2 torpedoes of the telly are enough to make really every ship useless. I also would like to point out our giveaway. A Tavern War uniform in white as well as Cyberpunk 2077 for PC are available until the end of November. Here you only have to be a visible subscriber and leave at least one comment under a video. This includes all videos that have been since the last draw. And I would also like to mention again, if you are looking for a ship or an item that is currently not available in the pledge store, check out Star Hangar. Here you can shop safely and mostly at really good prices. And of course I recommend Game Blast. Here you get a real added value for Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous, and you can use all functions optical appealing on your tablet. And Game Gloss also offers support for every program and every other game in the upcoming version. And last but not least, thanks to all Patreons and channel members. This feature is only available for a short time, and I'm really happy that there are some who support me here. Thanks a lot to you. You rock! I say goodbye, and as always, see you in the verse.